Hi everyone, I'm Anna from Product Management Festival. Welcome and thank you so much for joining us for this edition of our live webinar series on the hidden insights in PM, based on Product Management Festival's Trends and Benchmarks in PM 2019 report. The host of today's webinar is Adrian Zwingli, entrepreneur, founder, and chairman of Product Management Festival. At the end of this webinar, we invite you to send your questions to Adrian in the chat box on the side of the YouTube window. I'd like to now give the word to Adrian, and thank you again for joining us today.
Yes, thank you, Anna. So I'm Adrian, so welcome also from my side. So I have the honor to guide you through the next 30 minutes. So yeah, what's on today? So we have the Trends and Benchmark Report 2019 for product management. It's actually the full version. So we published a few months ago the pre-version, which had roughly half the data, half the graphs inside. And now we've published the full version. So if you got an initial version, the pre-version, please make sure that you can download the full version with the extended dataset. So let's have a look at the report itself, and you see it's pretty huge. So there are over 90 different graphs and data points, and that's pretty difficult to actually grab sense out of it. So what we're going to do today is connecting those different dots of the report, trying to making sense out of the data and getting to some actionable insights in how you could improve your organization and how you do product management. If you look at the report itself, you see that we have different areas. So we have one chapter on salaries and experience. So if you're wondering about the average salary of product managers, you've got some data in there. There's the view on organizations, processes and products, people, so the product managers, and then also the topic of leadership in the report. If you want to know who's behind Product Management Festival, you see here some of the boards we have. So we have an advisory board staffed by organizations like Google, Facebook, Naspers, but also Atlassian.booking.com. Then we have two conference boards, one in Europe and one in Singapore, with also very known companies and product people behind. So they steer the strategy of our conference and make sure that we execute it the right way. So if you have any questions, you can also reach out to those people. So how do we align the product management Trends and Benchmark report with all the other activities? So Product Management Festival does a lot on events as well. So we have the product management across the globe, product management nights across the globe. So these are evening events with between 30 and up to 80 people, and they exchange and learn together how to improve their PM skills. We also have executive circles in a few cities and an executive summit, a yearly executive summit, which happens in Zurich. So there are CPOs, roughly the 150 CPOs get together once a year. And then there are the two big conferences, one with 300 attendees in Singapore and one with 1,200 attendees happening in Zurich this November. So that maybe gives you a rough indication of what we do. So why is that important? For publishing a Trends and Benchmark report, it's pretty important that we have like a very diverse set of organizations covered so that we have reliable data. And through our conferences and events, we have like a very good penetration into the companies worldwide. It gives us that reach. So that helps on that point. So now let's really dig into the survey itself. And there's where's the data coming from? So here you see the different business sectors, customer types, and product areas where the answers come from. We had overall roughly 1,000 answers. So we have a good amount of data we can rely on. And they come from business sectors such as B2B, travel, banking, online, digital, or customer types, B2B, B2C, or even like internal software. We also had quite some answers from embedded systems, hardware, and IoT companies, which have a bit of a different angle to product management. So that gives us good insights too. All right, so let's go directly into the other data. So as a starter, we will look at the organization where product management is in. And here we need to cover first some initial data, some raw data, to then combine them afterwards in a more complex analysis. So first of all, we asked So what type of organizations you currently work for? And while that sounds a bit strange, it's very interesting. So 1/3 said that they work for a so-called agile company. So agile is defined as stable backbone, but quick decision-making and the responsive behavior. This is almost in the opposite to a bureaucratic company where we had like 30% of the answers. So there is silo thinking, processes over value, maybe slow companies and a bit stuck in the market. 17% came from chaotic organizations. So they labeled them as chaotic. So uncoordinated activities, a lot of firefighting and so on. 20% were more in the startup mode, so well-focused and dynamic ad hoc decisions. However, that's the difference to agile companies, a less stable backbone. And product management will be a bit different based on the organizational type you have. Okay, so that's the starting point for the next graphs. And then we ask, what about investments in product management? And here we see quite an increase of investment in product management in the last years. So we have here roughly 1/3, so 32%, which invest slightly higher, or the investments are slightly higher than the year before. And then we have 13% with significantly higher investments into product management. So there's more money flowing into product management in today's organizations. And here maybe a side note, it's actually not just that companies invest more money into product management. We also have the fact that many organizations change from a project-driven approach to a product-driven approach. So they change the way of working, often through the agile way of work. And that means that they're looking to hire more product managers. So the product management role there was not there yet, or just like in a basic role. And now they improve how they do PM. So they will hire like crazy if it comes now to product management. And that's what we see here in the areas of investment in product management. So talent acquisition is the biggest importance if it comes to investment. Well, that seems obvious, but we will see later on what that means. And then we also have working on new organizational structures. So at the end, various product management located in the organization. Is it in development? Is it on business side? Some even talk about being on the market side, or is it like an independent function or group of functions inside the organization? As you see this trend to increase on the talent side, you just said, this tendency of going from projects to product. Some large multinationals like telcos, banks, and insurance are turning towards product management. So they will kind of mix up the market. And interestingly, the product management salaries are a bit higher in those bigger and complex organizations. So they use that advantage to maybe hire or headhunt the PMs from you. If you talk about recruiting product managers, it's like how easy it is. And we also had a few analyses there. And here you see what's the PM recruitment level of effort. So 8.5% said it's relatively easy to find product managers. So that's less than 10%. So 1 out of 10 says it's easy. However, 47% say, well, we are successful in finding talent, but it was a great effort. And then we have 1/3 who say big problem in finding talent. So what's happening right now out there in the marketplace? Everyone wants to increase the number of PMs they have. That's what our data shows. They're hiring like hell, but it's pretty hard to find them. So what's happening, they start headhunting the product management talent from each other. And that's what's happening right now. So the question is, are they going to be successful when they approach your product management talents? Will they be successful of getting them away from you? So if we change the perception now away from the organizational part to the people, so your product management staff, there we get a very interesting picture. So here's the job satisfaction, and here we ask, what is the openness to other jobs? And that's devastating. So 75% of PMs are on the lookout for new jobs. That means 3 out of 4 would, or at least would consider switching the job if they're getting approached. That's a pretty high number. So organizations are at the risk of losing their PMs. So if you look on detail on the data, we see that 21% say, no, I'm happy in my current position. So that means only 1 out of 5, 1 PM out of 5 is actually happy in the current position and would not look into other jobs. 50% are not actively looking, but somehow open. And then we have 25%, yes, I'm actively searching. So there's also 1 out of 4 is actively looking for a new job. So again, we have this dilemma of, a lot of companies approaching your talent, your product management talent, and you're actually open to it. So they will respond. So you're on a high risk to lose them, while you even try to hire talent as well. It's very intense talent market right now. And the question is like, what you can do to keep them in your organization? Looking at the job satisfaction right then, it gives us a different picture. So 0 is very dissatisfied with the job, and 10 is extremely satisfied. And then the big question is, where are your PMs? And here, most of the PMs, they're on the scale between like 7, 8, or 9. That means the PMs are basically pretty happy. That's not difficult to solve. So even they are happy, they're willing to change the organization or the job. So what should you do? So what is behind this job satisfaction, and maybe where can you work on to improve that? Looking at what they want in a PM role, you see the product management maturity gets the biggest percentages. So like 35% are looking for higher product management maturity. The big question is, what is product management maturity? We will dig into that later. But it seems that like how they can do PM and what the environment is around them is important, and the biggest factor. It's even more important than better pay in that examples. There's also organizational maturity. So how is the organization around the product manager? Better pay, by the way, is not a big thing we found. You can always have more money, right? But it doesn't seem to be the driver. If you want to look at salaries, look at the front of the report. There we have some statistics based on role, geographics, etc. But what satisfies product managers in the role? So we asked like how happy you are there, and 45 said it's hard work, but it's fun. So that's like almost half, right? And then we have 17% have fun in the daily job, which is great, but it's only 17%. That's not a lot. That's 1 out of 6. Then we have 11% hard work and I'm exhausted. And then we have 8.7% workload is okay, but environment is very bad. Or workload is okay, but I'm not satisfied with the work. So that's 16.7%. So it doesn't look actually that PMs are that happy in what they do. So if you combine that now with the other data, we get a bit of more insight. So here you see the job satisfaction by the organization type. So here on the left, we have agile, then startup, bureaucratic, and chaotic. And what you see here is basically I have fun in the daily job, so that's the purple, which is pretty high in agile, and then decreases to startup, bureaucratic, chaotic. So there's a very tight connection to the type of organizations, job satisfaction and their organization they're working. Hard work, but it's fun, the same data. So it's quite extensive in agile, but then heavily decreases as it goes to bureaucratic or chaotic organization. On the other hand, workload is okay, but I'm not satisfied with the work. Increases if it comes to bureaucratic and chaotic organizations, and workload is okay, but environment is very bad, the same behavior. So there's a clear answer to what makes PMs happy. It's that organizational type. On the right side, you see the openness to other jobs. And we have agile, startup, bureaucratic, chaotic, so the organizational type, combined with the openness to other jobs. And we have the same picture. So yes, I'm actively searching for a new job. It's pretty low in more agile organizations and increases heavily to chaotic organizations. That means uncoordinated and fighting fires companies, almost half of the PM staff is actively looking for a new job. They're not looking, but somehow open stays almost the same across the organizations. But no, I'm happy my current position is pretty large in agile and also in startup, by the way, but then decreases to 8% or 9% in the bureaucratic or chaotic organizations. So here again, risk of losing talent with bureaucratic and chaotic organizations are pretty high. Agile and startup, it's a bit less. If you look at the same data again, but with a different connection, we have relation between career path status and openness to new opportunities. So here we have white, I'm stuck, then yellow, growth is limited because of myself, growth is limited to limitations in my organization, that's green, I'm developing but seeking more speed, that's red, and the purpose, I'm developing well. So let's look at the data. So no, I'm happy in my current position. People say, well, I'm developing well. So if you give your PMs room for improvement so that they can develop, they will be happy and they will stay. So no, I'm happy with my current position. However, as soon as that decreases a bit in what we have here, on not looking but somehow open, but yes, I'm actively searching, they're open to switch jobs. And that's like the green one, growth is limited to limitations in my organizations. So you see, as soon as that is smaller, people tend to stay. So there's a direct relation to it. If you want to decrease the number of people on the lookout, you need to give them room to grow. So it's all about advancement, right? So craftsmanship and how they can work as a PM. So what can you do based on that data? First of all, ask yourself, so if you're a leader for PMs, how much of your time, of your personal time, do you invest in the growth of your PMs? How well do you support them? And do you actually properly lead them? Do you just see them like by occasions, or do you have proper one-to-ones where you coach them and help them in their personal growth? If you do, the chance is higher that they will stay, right? If you have questions about the coaching of PMs and how you should do that, there is a very good blog series lately, an article series by Marty Kagan. Most of you will know him. So there you can dig into and see how you could do that in a more deeper way. Switching now into the leadership role in product management and see how is that connected to it. We have analysis on career path status. So again, I'm stuck, I'm developing well, seek more speed, I'm developing well, growth is limited to limitations in my organizations, and then combined with the role. What you see here is that product managers, they're often limited in their growth, in the personal growth, so not developing that well as they seek. So it's also then the yellow. But that changes in the hierarchy. So managers of product managers or VP of products or CPOs or even CEOs to think, well, I'm developing well, where's the problem? And that has to do with the hierarchy. So when we talk to leaders in product management, that's what we see often. So they look down in the organization and they say, well, it's all perfect. They and I can develop well. Well, maybe we need to put ourselves into the shoes of product managers and see, can they develop well? So looking from let's say from the lower ranks of the organizations up into the hierarchy and see, well, do I have the room to grow? Yes or no? And there's maybe different. So that's what we see here based on the data. So what can you do? If you're leading PMs, ask the questions at the next one-to-one. So when you meet your product manager, ask them, so how do you grow? What's your personal advancement? Do you have enough options to grow? Can you shine in the organizations? Yes or no? If not, what do you need to do to make that happen? If you're a product manager and not a product lead, you may just tell it your leader. Just approach your boss and say, hey, I feel stuck in the organization. Just to be very honest, I've done that job now for a few months or years, whatever. And I think I need to develop. So can you help me on that path? So then it's the job of your leader to prepare the ground and give you space, give you room to grow as a person. If that doesn't happen, if you're in a very bureaucratic organization, or maybe if you have a bad leader, then I think it's fair enough to think about a new job, to be very honest. All right, so then the big question is, what do they want, right? So now we talked about, yes, organizations are seeking new talent, but also risk on losing the talent. And then we looked on what kind of like the aspects of product managers' needs. And here, like in detail now, what are they looking for? The first question we asked in that combination is what product management perception role definition was within the organization. So at the end, it's like, is it clearly defined what a PM is doing, or is everyone like dragging on a PM? It's like, hey, you should do that, you should do that, you should do some pre-sales, you need to do some marketing stuff as well. And here, that's the second row. You see, role is clearly defined and understood by everybody in the organization. So let's be very clear. That means 21% of the organizations have a well-defined and established role of product management. That's 1 out of 5. That means 4 out of 5 organizations, it's not clearly defined. And then it's tough for the PM to work in that environment. Because every time he wants to move the needle, he wants to move things forward, you get like into this conflict about what you're allowed to do and what not. We have there an additional insight from another report that is from one of my other companies. Unfortunately, it's in German, but I think you get it. So we ask, what do you do in the actual environment? And the black one is the business. Then we have PL, which is project lead, PM is product managers, product owner, product analyst, and requirements engineer. So yes, there's also like the old world as well. And then we ask, so who is responsible for the vision? It's now at the bottom. Who is kind of like looking into user stories, who is specifying them, who is validating them, and who is managing them. And what you see here is huge mix of the roles with the activities. So what happened is that many organizations had an operating model, like some years ago it was like waterfall, and then they mixed agile to it. And now they're mixing product thinking or the product-led organization to it. And they combine those different approaches to how you do things. The problem is they did not get rid of old roles. That's happening. So what's leading that is that you have multiple people responsible for the same thing, and it's unclear who can decide what, who is responsible for what, and how you have, based on that, how you need to structure your day. So if you're PM in such an environment, it's pretty tough. So there, your responsibility as a leader is to align that and clearly define what it is, based as example on a Raki model, so roles and responsibility model. And the same actually is on executive level as well. So here we asked, so, do you understand and value product management? And there only 1/3, so 30%, completely understands and values product management. So that's pretty tough. So 1 out of 3, which is still good, right? But it also means it's 2/3, that's not the case. So it's a bit of unclear there. And that means if your top management is not clear what they want to have from product management, that's going to dribble down in the organization. So it's not clear at the top. You will have these misunderstandings in the organization as well. So the first thing as a leader is just clarifying that. What do you expect? What is the role, what's in there and what's not. That's pretty tough, I know, but if you don't do that, it will, the result is going to be more unhappy PMs. They will be open for new jobs, and if they're getting headhunted, so other organizations, maybe even your competitors, see that, they would just try to headhunt them from you, so you're on the risk to lose your talent again. So that's the connection there. We also asked the product managers about their main activities. So what did you do in the last 4 to 8 weeks? And that's pretty surprising. So we have like 25% ad hoc requests of firefighting in daily business. This is tough, right? So where is like the real product management work? Like you see like all the other product work down in the other areas, so like 10% or 7% on it, but it's not real product work. It's also direct meetings without product focus. So that's 12%, that's 1/6, and that's like 5 hours a week. They have meetings, nothing to do with product. It's a lot of time. So there the question is, what can you do that your product managers can have the focus they need to work on the product? How you can do that? Well, just in the next one-to-one, ask them. So where do you spend your time on, and how can we improve that? Are there like demands from the organizations which drag you off, off the things you actually should do? So they're easy things, you can do that. The second thing is, as a leader, you didn't need to ask or could ask, okay, what can I do to make sure that you can improve that? So the many things, the many topics you need to address as a leader, which the product managers cannot address. If you're a PM, it's the other way around. Go to your leader and show your timekeeping and say, here's, I can show you where I am, and here I lost time over there. Can you maybe help me to get that better organized? And then if you go into the top 3 challenges for product managers, you see on the top competing objectives in the organization. So the biggest fights PMs have is like that there are different objectives in the organizations, they're competing, and it's not clarified which one is most important. So that's, again, it's a leadership action which needs to be taken. And then the third one is also the same. It's like lack of role clarity, we just talked about. Lack of time, that's a different story. There's never going to be enough time for work. So that's something what we need to learn in terms of time management. So I think that's not a direct topic just for product management, but the first one and the third one is a clear leadership topic where you as a product leader need to step in and solve that for your product manager. If you can get rid of that, you will have a lot of happier product managers in the organization. So if you now put that together, we can summarize. Organizations are looking for PM talents. There's a war of talent going on. And at the same time, even if you want to hire, you're on a big risk to lose your talent. So 3 out of 4 are open to switch jobs. So how can you respond to overcome that, to retain your talent, to hire new talent, and to create a more higher performing PM organization? So the first one is work on PM maturity. It's all about the culture and how you lead as a product leader in that organization. It has a lot to do with craftsmanship, like how you do product management, so the real work, and the processes you have in there and the organization itself. So in the organization itself, that leads to the second point, like the agile environment or the agile organization. And here we just need to be very clear. Doesn't mean that your whole organization needs to be agile, but you're surrounded, you basically interact with 20 to 30 people to work on your product. So that part should be organized in an agile way. So it should be fast, so speed matters, and you need to be able to take fast decisions. If you can deliver that environment to your PMs, they will accelerate. They would love to work there. On the other hand, you might need less firefighting and less bureaucracy. So less firefighting means having a clear eye on what's going wrong there, and then maybe trying to solve the problems, the real cause of the problems and not the superficial ones. So agile organization as a part there as well. Third one is room for growth. And then at the end, it's you. You as a head of product or director of product, how you manage your product managers. Do you manage them for growth, or do you just manage them because you have to do a bit of management as well? It's a lot to do with education, that you give them the space to learn. The questions, do you have, as example, a PM exchange internally, a tribe of product managers where they exchange on the experience? Or if you give them personal challenges, like let's see, can they accelerate on the next tasks? And then how can your PMs shine? So do you give them a stage where they can shine and show what they learned or what they achieved? And that is internally as externally. And that's then the link to the fourth one, your PM brand. Right? At the end, and that's how it is, if you want to hire talent, and that's one of the key objectives you have, you want to hire talent or retain talent, you need to showcase how good you are. Right? From inside the house, the grass is always greener on the other side, right? And then when people maybe leave your organization and are on the other side, they realize, oh, well, the grass is maybe not greener here. It's the same as at the old organization, or your organization was actually better. However, the problem is your talent is already gone. So yes, you need to showcase how good you are at that. Your own employees can compare it, and you need to do that in an internal and external way. So internal, we talked about PM Exchange. External, go to meetups, go to, as example, product management nights, and be part of the wider product management community. So even having, as example, a product management blog on your company website, that could attract talent too. So as you see, these are like the 4 areas where we think you can work on to make sure that you can hire and retain the talent, and also work on the performance and maturity of your product management organization. So now in a bit more detail, we got many questions, why we actually organizing this product management executive program. What we realized is that many PMs grow in their ranks, right? So they are junior PMs, senior PMs, and you can get up to the director level of product, but most of the time due to the technical knowledge. However, when you grow in an organization, the leadership aspect, the organizational aspects, they take over, right? And what we realize is that we need to give our PM leads a better understanding for that part of work. That's why we organized the product management executive program together with INSEAD, so the business school #1 worldwide, based on Financial Times, in their executive education department. And we run 3 trainings a year. We've roughly around 35 CPOs who attend those days. So that's one way. So if you want to develop further, that's one thing you could look at. So it's organizational behavior and leadership. Right? Then secondly, as we talked about this branding part, the branding experience, do nights, as example here. So they actually, we facilitate those events, but it's organized by local teams, by PMs in those cities, like Mannheim, Singapore, Geneva, Porto, Amsterdam. As far as I know, we just had product management nights in Toronto and Stockholm too. So their PMs get together and say, well, we want to have like a meetup, right? For, as I said, 30 to 80 people. So if you want to have that branding, start organizing those product management nights. If you want to do them, just contact us and make sure that you can showcase your own product, or go to a conference like APAC, the Product Management Festival APAC in Singapore. It's happening in June. So here you see all the organizations talking about, and just look at that. Google, Flipkart, Grab, Spotify, Zalando, Amazon, Walmart Labs, TransferWise. They all go out there and talk about how do you do product management. And that's how other product managers see that and think, oh, well, they have they do it in a pretty nice way. So that's interesting, I'll maybe go there, right? So these are the tools you can use for making yourself a more, like, let's say, well-branded employer. All right, so there was a lot of data, I know, I'm totally aware of that. So let's go into the Q&A session. Anna, do you have some questions coming in?
Thank you, Adrian. This was very insightful. Yes, we have questions coming in from the audience. And the first one is from Frank. He's asking, are all those product managers' roles the same in terms of role and responsibility? Thank you, Frank.
No, they're not the same. First of all, they're two different aspects. One is like the organization you work in. So in a startup-focused company or like in a mid-sized company, PM is different than in a large organization, as example, Google or Facebook. We need to clearly see that difference. However, the core, like the inner core of product management stays the same. The outer layers are maybe a bit different, like how you interact with others or how many other surrounding roles are there which could support you or topics you still have to cover. So that's one angle. Yes, there is a difference, but you can still learn from each other. So I'm always so grateful at our conference when we see, as example, startup PMs learning from the Google PMs. On the other hand, we see Google PMs there and they look at like how others are doing it and say, oh, wow, that's interesting. I maybe want to use that idea as well. So yes, there's common ground. The other type is the different levels. So in the last 2 years, this role of a junior PM started to pop up. You know, so where they enter an organization as a PM and they work for the first half year in this junior role to learn how to do things, and they actually also need to prove themselves that they're able to do that. And then they go to more like professional role, and then into senior product management and your product leads, or then even a director or CPO. That's also starting. You actually can see the difference pretty well also on the salaries in the graphs. How is that split up? And their responsibilities change as well. So yes, there are two different angles to it, and the roles are different. Are there any other questions, Anna?
Yes, Salvatore is asking any hints about the difference between startup and chaotic descriptions?
Startup and chaotic descriptions. Okay. So where's the difference? So chaotic means that you're fast, however, you change focus very often, right? So that's the, chaotic means like, oh yeah, let's do that, and let's do B, and let's do C, and then let's go, oh, let's do A again, right? So you change course all the time. And in startup mode, well, there are also different phases in startup mode, but basically at the end, we want to solve that problem, and then they stick to it. So they're clearly focused on just doing that. They're not don't have such a stable backbone as actual organizations, because they still need to be faster, right? But that's the clear distinction to chaotic. By the way, chaotic doesn't mean that it's a small company. We see that a huge tendency that digitization through huge established companies into chaotic mode. So everyone started to act, but the actions are not aligned. So also to clarify that. Okay, Anna, back to you.
Priyansh is asking, do product managers also do program and or project management?
Oh yeah. That's one of the big questions. So first of all, let's look at it as roles, right? So as a product manager can be a role or a job, and a person can have multiple roles. And so let's assume product manager is not only a job, but can also be a role. And then a program lead or project lead is also a role. So, but there's a clear distinction, right? So product management, from my point of view, is owning the problems or owning the content, like what the solution could be to it, right? But it's content driven. A project lead or program lead is more, let's say, coordination driven, be it time or even sometimes money, right? So that's the difference. So if a program lead or a project lead is very content driven, that's maybe like a sign that the role is not properly educated. So can have one person both roles? Yes, it can. However, there are problems if you combine that, right? So at one day you need to decide, are you looking more like on the coordination activities and time as example, or on the content? And that will bring you into conflict. And then often the more like apparent stuff will lead you to the decisions, and that's often time and money, right? So then the product lead role overtakes the PM role and weakens there with the PM role. So that's why most organizations really try to separate them based on people. So You have maybe program leads in your organization, but it's not combined with product management.
And we have a question from Michael. Any advice on how to communicate and define within the organizations the responsibilities, and especially what PM is not taking care of, for example, product marketing?
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, we need to have a common agreement before we communicate it. And to get in a common agreement, so it doesn't make sense if you just define, this is product management, and then you communicate it to others. This maybe makes sense to define that what PM is and what they should do and what not, that you do that together. You may be the driving force, but you want to get input from your peers in the organization. So not only product management, but also development, as example, marketing, you name it, UX. So that's the first part, and it's also called roles and responsibilities, or a Raki matrix. So you drop like all the roles you have in your organization and the different activities, and then you say like who is executing what, who's informs in what, who gives input, who can like execute it, right? So that's a Raki matrix. So you develop that. As soon as you have that, you maybe go into communication phase and tell it to others, basically, right? Hint there, don't be too salesy, right? So PMs are often very proud of what they do, and sometimes that proud shines through when they communicate. And then if people see that proudness and like see, well, okay, so they think they're the master of everything, so they really do all the decisions, so they make the difference, and as example, not us as engineers, that will create a bad climate, will affect the culture. So please be very aware on how you communicate and how you do that in your organization. We think it's better to be humble and communicate it in a humble way and say, well, you're open, how you see that, and don't kind of like, go very pushing that. Okay, Anna, back to you.
Thank you, Adrian. I think these were all the questions. Thank you to the audience for these. And I'd like to give back the word to you now for the closing. Okay,
thank you a lot for your time. So that was the first webinar, and I know there are a few other coming up. So we're going to have SAP, Google, and as far as I know, Zalando giving their insights on product management based on the data of the Trends and Benchmark study. So stay tuned. You will receive the data in a few days or weeks. Thank you, and bye-bye.